If you change the way you think, your life will never be the same again. At the age of 27, a man who had just graduated from Harvard as a doctor of medicine was going through a rough patch in his life. He had been through tough times before, and he also had to deal with sickness and sadness while he was in medical school for 6 years. It was worse this time, though. He had suicidal thoughts for a long time. His name was William J. James. He became one of the founders of the School of Pragmatism and the most well-known psychologist in the United States. It took James 3 years to get over his sadness on his own. Just so you know, James wasn't just sad. He wrote about how bad William James's mental health was because he edited his work. For a long time, James couldn't understand why he didn't kill himself. James also had panic attacks and saw things that weren't there at this time. He had been through the same awful things with his dad many years ago. This made James believe that his illness was natural and that he couldn't get better. But after reading a piece by the French psychologist Charles Renouvier in 1870, James had a big mental flash. He wrote in his diary, "I think yesterday was a crisis in my life. I finished the first part of Renouvier's second essay and see no reason why his definition of free will, the sustaining of a thought because I choose to when I might have other thoughts, needs to be the definition of an illusion. At any rate, I will assume for the present until next year that it is not an illusion. My first act of free will shall be to believe in free will." James's main idea is that we have control over what we think, which means we can choose one thought over another. But James doesn't say that our thoughts are our own. When we just sit and think about things for a while, a lot of things come to mind. We can't change our thoughts. They're just there. But we have free will, which means we can pick which things to think about. In other words, we can change the way perception works. We need to understand this a lot for our daily lives. You can say, "I choose to feel this way," instead of, "I can't help but feel this way." This book is all about decision-making. You can learn to control your thoughts and pick what you think, but it takes work. We can also think more clearly in a way that is better and can make our lives and work better. That's the main point of this book. To me, the most important thing in life is being able to decide what you think. What you think shapes how your life goes. If we change the way we think, we can do anything. Everything changes because of that one truth. A lot of great thinkers have written that thoughts are very important. Ralph Waldo Emerson, William James's uncle and a big inspiration to him, said it best, "You become what you think about all day long." I agree with that, but we need to remember that ideas turn into actions. In other words, you can't change what you do until you change how you think. Let's start. Why do we need a book that tells us how to think practically? The most useful thing we have is our brain. They are more important than any tool or technology. Mastery's writer said it best. If there is any instrument you must fall in love with and fetishize, it is the human brain, the most miraculous or inspiring information processing tool devised in the known universe, with complexity we can't even begin to fathom, and with dimensional powers that far outstrip any piece of technology in sophistication and usefulness. One thing is wrong, though. We don't know how to use this great tool we were given. For some reason, we don't think we're very smart, even though tests show we're not. The author of Predictably Irrational, Dan Ariely, says this about how we make choices. We usually think of ourselves as sitting in the driver's seat with ultimate control over the decisions we make and the direction our life takes. But alas, this perception has more to do with our desires, with how we want to view ourselves, than with reality. Emphasis mine. A lot of mistakes or cognitive flaws have been found in the way people think in the last 100 years. There is strong proof that most of the time we are not useful thinkers. Most of the time, we make decisions without all the facts because of how we feel. A few books I've read have helped me think and choose better. There was one thing they all lacked that I liked about them. They were helpful because they told stories that helped us understand why we think the way we do. That is, I couldn't find a book that helped me change the way I think. That's the reason I wrote this little book. It teaches me everything I know about how to think. That's why I'm writing this, to help you improve your life, business, or job in some way. That's why this book has all of my best thoughts. Think Straight was written so that you can read it more than once. I hope it helps you, especially when things are tough. Thoughts, stories, and my own life are all used in this book to give you tips that you might or might not be able to use. At first, I thought that these types of books could only help people who are willing to be open-minded. I can save you an hour if you don't think that's you. Get rid of this book right away. You can throw it away, burn it, or ask for your money back. You need to decide whether to use it or not. Do what works. This is because I'm not a scientist, psychologist, philosopher, or anything else that would help me know what people think. I thought that you have no control over your thoughts my whole life. Because of how I thought, I felt happy one day and sad the next. You know what else? I got mad easily and couldn't figure out how to fix simple issues in my work, relationships, and business. I got better at thinking, though, by keeping a notebook, reading, and thinking a lot about myself. How do I know I can think better now than before? I'm glad that my thoughts don't control me anymore. My mind no longer works for me instead of the other way around. I think that's what it means to think better. It's not about how smart you are or how many math problems you can solve. It's about how you think to get what you want. I don't say I know everything about how to think better, but I do know how to use my thoughts to make my life happier, healthier, richer, and more important. For me, change your thoughts, change your life is true. 3 years ago, I gave up on starting my own business, was under a lot of stress, and hated my life. I was stuck. But I don't want to sound too serious about what's going on. We've all probably been there. You will feel stuck in your life if you haven't already. It's just how things are these days. I don't want to scare you, but you know how these self-help books end, right? They want you to think that I was broke, upset, and sad, and that my life was terrible. But then I found X and everything changed. I'm not different, to be honest. In this book, I want to sell you on the idea of useful and useless thoughts. But there is a difference. I'm just telling you my opinion. What you do with it is up to you. John Dewey, a realist and the father of functional psychology, said, "What works is true." But that doesn't mean we should believe everything we read or hear. That would be crazy. To always think straight, we need to stay centered, look at the facts, and listen to other people before making decisions that are good for us. You have to work at being able to think straight. I think of the mind as a body that needs to work out regularly to stay strong. You can learn new things to keep your mind sharp. I believe that learning ended when school did. For some, that means the end of high school. For others, it means the end of college or graduate school. Sometimes the things we learn in school change the way we think and act in the world. But we don't change the way we think very often once we have it. The fact that we share the same thoughts makes us feel at ease. We stay away from new things at all costs because we know they are scary. Because we're lazy, we'd rather not do anything than take the time to do it well. A great deal of people say, "I need to relax and watch something on Netflix these days." I also said it. That makes me wonder why we need to take breaks from the things we do over and over again, like thinking about the same things over and over again. We don't really push our minds when we're not under a lot of stress, like when we have a test or exam coming up. We could ask, what's the point? But the point is to keep your mind healthy by training it in the same way you keep your body healthy. You work out your body, so why not work out your mind too? You don't stop going to the gym after 4 years. Your mind is also the most valuable thing you have, so you need to train it to use it right. It was the Stoic philosopher Epictetus who said it best. The life of wisdom is a life of reason. It's important to learn how to think straight. There is no easy way to learn how to think clearly. You have to train yourself. Epictetus said we need to learn how to do it because we don't know anyway. For most of my life, my thoughts were all over the place. I never even thought about having a mind. If you asked me to draw my thoughts, it would look like this. A diagram, a picture that is all over the place. What was going through my mind was that mess you see up there. Thoughts that were good, bad, sad, happy, and most of all, mixed up. I often asked myself, why does my mind keep going? Where is the stop button? I did not know how to utilize my smart mind to its fullest now that I consider it. I moved to London in 2014 from Leeuwarden, the Netherlands, where I grew up. It was very different from where I lived before. There were 100,000 people living where I moved from. It has 7 million now. It was really hard to find a place to live. It was harder than I thought it would be. I read about it and talked to my new co-workers, who told me that it was almost impossible to quickly find an apartment without getting ripped off. I decided to rent a room instead because it was easier for 3 months, and I went to see different parts of London that were only an hour's ride on the tube from where I worked. That was my plan, and things went well at first. I finally found a cheap, small one-bedroom apartment in Oldfield, which is in the southwest of London, after looking for 2 months. I had everything planned out. I broke the lease for the room and signed the one for the new place. Friends and family from Holland helped me out. We could use their car to move my stuff from the old place to the new one, which was only 10 minutes away, since I didn't have much. I thought this was a good deal. As soon as I got the key to the new place, I would move in. I'd return the keys to the previous owner, relax, and watch Netflix. I also thought I could get everything done in one day. Things didn't go as planned after all, it looks like. At the last minute, my new owner changed her mind and no longer wanted to rent out her apartment. She told me this the day before I was going to move. Now I'm without a place to live, and my SUV is full of my stuff. That night in my parents' hotel room, I was really scared. My stuff was in a van, and I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what to do, so I'm sitting here like a fool. I didn't bring you guys over from Holland for nothing. It was all my fault for the rest of the day and into the night. Do you really want to know? I agree that I might have been a bit too harsh. Let's just say what happened. I was a little too sensitive, right? That's why I picked this example. It shows how silly my idea was. I got lost in my thoughts and forgot what was going on. What did I think when I wasn't sure? Let's go have some trouble in the first world. The next morning, when I woke up, my parents and brother told me to stop feeling sorry for myself and find a way out. To clear things up, I told myself, think straight. I knew I had to get rid of the mess. I had to get right to the point. There is one helpful thought on the right and a bunch of thoughts that don't help on the left. The thoughts on the left are things like worry, stress, pain, confusion, and not knowing what to do. The thought of making tools made me want to do it. I needed to get an answer quickly for my London story. It was easy after that, as long as I could remember what I was doing. While I looked for a new place to stay, I booked an Airbnb. We stayed in an Airbnb for a whole week. The owner changed her mind again and let me rent the apartment. That's why I didn't need to worry, stress, or think about anything. How often does that happen? We make choices and assumptions so quickly based on what we think. Everyone here is a person. We make mistakes, change our minds, and believe false things all the time. That's okay. You shouldn't be going crazy with your thoughts. I decided to change after a lot of other pointless thoughts. Things didn't happen to me in a big way that made me decide to change. Life isn't like a Hollywood story. I know people who don't change until they've had a lot of bad luck. When the time comes, we have to say enough. And you know what? We shouldn't worry about the fact that some people don't change at all. After years of mental chaos, I had had enough of the inner pain. That's the most beautiful thing I can think of. There's no need for a all is lost moment. Things like that don't happen very often. My thoughts have changed a lot since about 2 years ago. I now know how to clear my mind of clutter and fill it with clarity. Now there is peace. This book has more information that will show you how I did it step by step. But first, I'd like to talk about how ideas have changed over time. Thoughts come in many forms, and not all of them are good. What you think about is the most important thing. Rome's Alexander the Great, a Stoic thinker, said it best. The universe changes, but our lives are what we think they are. Things are changing more quickly than ever. Many bad things happen. Jobs are scarce. Computers make you zombie-like. School costs a lot. Living costs rise quickly while wages don't. You have less time for yourself, and so on. Every morning it seems like a new world. That's how fast life changes. What do you think about that? Like me, these events make you think a lot, which makes you worry and not know what to do. How am I going to stay alive? How can I change my business to fit the new market? How do I get ahead at work? How am I not crazy? It's tough to keep your thoughts in check. People have always wanted to be able to control their thoughts. Since the 5th century BC, philosophers from all over the world have agreed on one thing: the mind is a tool for solving problems. In fact, many philosophers say that the way you think changes the way you live. Condius, Socrates, Descartes, and William James all wrote about what they think and how they see the world. A lot of us know that Socrates said to question everything, even yourself. Socrates is said to have told the Oracle of Delphi, "I know one thing, that I know nothing." This was after being named the best man in the world. He's smart because he thinks he doesn't know anything. How smart is that? Thought leader René Descartes, who lived in the 1600s, went even further. He was not sure about anything in life, not even his own survival. How do you know you're not living or thinking in the Matrix? This is why he famously said, "I think, therefore I am," which means I think, therefore I am. Descartes believed that he existed because he could think. You are real, even if your thoughts are odd. So why not make your life a little more fun, useful, helpful, and light-hearted? Have you ever written down or paid attention to how you feel? Please give it a day. If you want to keep track of your thoughts, write them down every 2 hours. Don't be afraid of your own thoughts. They don't always make sense. We're split up as a species. Descartes also thought about his own ideas and knew they were flawed. It's not the beliefs themselves that we should question, but where they come from. This is because most beliefs are based on how we or other people see things. How many of your ideas come from what other people have said, or from what you think or feel right now? At the heart of thinking is the ability to tell the difference between truth and lies. What's real? What's not true? One way to look at that question is from a realistic point of view. William James said, "Pragmatism is the attitude of looking away from first things, like principles, categories, and supposed necessities, and toward last things like fruits, consequences, and facts." This means that our thoughts should have a reason for being. They're not useful if they don't. To think this way is to be straight. The idea of pragmatism is not an answer. There is a way to think about everything. Your thoughts play an instrument, but they play different notes at the same time. It is hard to think, but it is the most important thing in life. Remember that the way we think affects the way we live, and the choices we make are based on what we think. Life doesn't go in a straight line. If A leads to B and B is C, then A also leads to C. That's how I've always thought. I judged based on looks, first impressions, and what I thought I knew. That being said, my thoughts weren't helpful. They weren't helpful at all. I didn't think. I just did what everyone else did. I let other people think for me. That's how most of us are. I really believed I would never have to worry about getting a job after college until I was about 26 years old. I found out the hard way that life doesn't promise anything. Making money takes work, and a degree has nothing to do with it. I would say skills are another thing that can help you do well in your job. Getting better at something makes your life more valuable to other people. Most of us believe that getting where we want to go is as easy as following a straight line. So, let's say you want to have more freedom in your life and want to start a business. I always set that as my goal and planned to keep working toward it until I got it. I did have to take a lot of side trips, though. I built businesses that didn't work out and worked for other people. The way we think changes when we understand that life isn't always smooth. Several times along the way, I felt down and almost gave up. But now I know that plans don't always work out, which helps me find other ways to reach my goals. One of my goals while I was living in London and Amsterdam was to invest in real estate, but I didn't have enough money to start. Where I grew up is where I found my first deal. There were low prices, lots of people I knew, more people moving in, and the city spending a lot of money on schools and new businesses. I chose to look elsewhere for 2 months before I made my first deal there. The point is that there are lots of ways to get what you want, and you shouldn't do what everyone else is doing. Even when you're not thinking, your brain is still busy. When new information comes in, it reads it and checks it against what it already knows. It checks to see what the pieces of information have in common and what makes them different. This is how our mind works and how we think of new things. Nerve cells in the brain are linked together in many small networks. I don't think about how I can use what I learn right away. Interesting information is what I feed my brain, and different types of knowledge may be saved in different networks. I'm okay with putting the pieces together later. As Steve Jobs said, you can only connect the dots when you look backward. This means you have to think that the dots will connect someday. You have to make the connections in your mind if you want them to make sense in the future. This can only be done by doing things that feed your brain, like learning, making mistakes, thinking, or anything else that does the same. A heuristic is a plan we use because we've already solved a similar problem before. Everyone knows that trial and error is a rule, which is a way to find solutions to problems. Also a way of thinking, but trying things out and seeing what works isn't always the best way to do things. If we tried to build a job by making mistakes, we would probably die before we got there. It's not worth it to try and fail with everything in life. Social proof is another rule that doesn't work in real life. We often decide what to do or say based on what other people do or say. My best heuristic is being familiar with something. It says that behavior that got good results in the past doesn't mean that it will get good results in the future. The familiarity heuristic also helps us understand why we like things and places we already know more than new ones. Every day we do the same things, eat the same things, walk the same way, make the same mistakes, and do the same work tasks over and over. After that, we whine that our lives are dull or stuck. That's why you're making choices based on what you know. Who says, though, that being used to something is always a good thing? For sure, it works, but to make a big step forward, you need something else. Heuristic methods might make it easier to make decisions, but they are not at all useful in real life. Heuristics often lead to results that aren't satisfactory. That's a sign that you need to make a change. Use the main idea of pragmatism instead of heuristics to sort through information and make choices. True is what works, but don't take it too seriously. A tense friend told me, "Taking drugs works for me," after I told him about this idea. He's right, this idea isn't quite what it seems to be, but what in life can you really believe? Let's look at the saying, "Good things come to those who wait." It doesn't mean you should stay home and wait for good things to happen. That much you already know. Think of the idea that true is what works as a filter that you can use on everything that you take in. I always ask myself, will the outcome of this decision change the way I live? If you do that every time you have to make a choice, you'll automatically weed out information that isn't important and only make choices that will actually change your life. You have to use whatever works, which means you have to change your habits. As an example, common sense says that bigger cities also mean more possibilities. That's why I moved to London in the first place. I really believed it. There was a big chance for me at the time, and I did take it. But I had bigger problems and tasks as well. I don't like big places either. I dislike places that are too busy, have dirty air, and have living costs that are too high. It was clear that I didn't like living in a big city. The way I lived was bad because of that way of thought. That's why I went back to Leeuwarden in the end. I can drive anywhere in the city in 10 minutes. It's quiet, and I know a lot of people here. I can work less and make more. I know, though, that my way of life doesn't work for most people. It could be dull or not interesting enough for them. What does that mean for you? Don't think. It's hard to think. I could never stop. When you're in bed at night, it's easy to get lost in your thoughts for hours. But I am sure that 99% of the thoughts I have had in the past have not been useful. Most of the time, I didn't do anything with my thoughts. I didn't figure out how to fix a problem or read books to try to understand hard ideas or concepts. I did this for a long time in my head. While I thought about it, it felt more like I was worried, stressing, or freaking out. You can call it what you want, but I call it a thought that is busy. What with? The list goes on. I wonder what my boss thinks. What happens if I screw up and lose my job? I think he doesn't care about me. I just keep failing. Does she love me? Why does my life suck? Why is my life awesome and other people's lives are not? I don't care about my job. Is there something wrong with me? I can't finish anything. What's wrong with me? I want to quit. I only have one question for you. What do the above ideas mean in real life? I am waiting, yes. Still no answer. Right on. We all have those kinds of thoughts, even though they don't help us. How are you going to get rid of them? I now know that you can't get rid of them. Don't forget that we can't control our minds. We are only in charge of the ideas we act on. You only need to be aware of and accept your thoughts. Don't blame yourself or ask, why do I have these thoughts? No one can answer that. You should be aware of your thoughts and choose what to pay attention to and what to set aside. For instance, I've been thinking about stopping everything I'm doing for as long as I can remember. During high school, I wished I could quit and get a job. It was hard for me to play basketball, and I eventually quit. I can keep going until I get to the present. I think about leaving my job at least 3 or 4 times a month, no matter how much I love it. Those thoughts used to keep me up at night a lot. I had enough about 2 years ago. I wanted to stop thinking, so I stopped acting on every thought I had and started being aware of them. You don't have power over me, I would tell myself in a strange way. It does work, though. It made me feel a lot better and relaxed. Even when I want to give up, I still pay attention to it because it's sometimes a sign, and I refuse to give in to my fear. You shouldn't either. Inside your control versus outside your control. Think only about things you can control if you want to have useful thoughts. Because there's not much you can control in life, that gets rid of about 99% of your thinking. Focus only on what you can change, like your wants, actions, words, and plans. What's an idea that doesn't help? Anything that you can't change and doesn't serve a reason. Do you remember things from the past? That is the best example of a thought that has no point. Unless you're thinking about a choice or mistake you made in the past, then you're doing something useful. Thoughts about the past don't help with anything else, though. It doesn't help from that point of view. Do you ever daydream about the future? Also, that doesn't help. There are 2 main types of important thoughts I've found. You should think about how to fix things. A problem is just a question that needs to be solved. There are a lot of problems in the world, so use your brain and think of ways to solve them. Understanding what you know. That means you should try to remember what you've learned and think about how you can use it to make your life, job, relationships, and other things better. That's it. You can forget about everything else. You haven't trained your mind yet if you're always thinking about things that don't help you. Get out of your own head. You'll go crazy if you don't. No one will be an exception. Think about whether or not that is worth it. Do you really want to waste your life, time, and energy on thoughts that don't matter? We both know the truth. Promise not to think about things that don't matter. Take charge of your thoughts now. It's not going to help you to think about the past and the future. It will never happen, and it never did. Do not believe your mind. When you think back on a choice you made, did it seem like a bad idea? We humans are very odd. Each person makes their own social world. Because we all have cognitive biases, how you see the world is totally up to you. 2 scientists, Amos Tversky and Daniel Kahneman, came up with the idea of cognitive biases in 1972. A cognitive bias is an error in the way we think that affects how we judge things and, by extension, how we make choices. It's the attentional tendency that I like the most. There is science proof that your thoughts have an effect on your life. The attentional bias says that our thoughts change how we see things, and our actions and choices, which make up our lives, are based on how we see things. That's what it says. If you think negatively, you will also feel negatively about life. One very well-known cognitive mistake is the confirmation bias. It talks about what we do when we want to be sure of what we believe. When you really believe in something, you will do everything you can to find proof. You do everything to show that you're right. You don't look at facts, you look at what you think. This is what every cognitive bias does. Since this is the case, it comes down to this. Don't make choices based on your views, simple logic, or even science. Scientists are human, which means they have cognitive biases, and they often look for proof to back up their own ideas. You don't need more knowledge to make better choices. I learned that making choices with a practical and impartial point of view is more helpful. The worst thing is that there is no such thing as the best choice. I look at the list of cognitive biases when I feel stuck in a chain of thoughts. It's easy and doesn't cost anything. Just find the list on Wikipedia. I think most views are just plain silly, which is the point. When we look at the facts, some of the things we do don't make sense. This is called cognitive bias. It hurts me to think that way, but I do it all the time. I think someone doesn't care if they don't answer my email. I don't believe people who say they're sorry are really sorry. I feel sick when I have a headache. For sure, I'm not practical because I know that beliefs are not facts. Get rid of all your ideas and only look at the facts if you want to think clearly. The realist sticks to facts and specifics, sees how truth works in specific situations, and then extrapolates. Let's keep things simple and look at two ways to decide: using facts and making assumptions. Is your product useful? Do you believe it's useful? Do you think you will be able to get money for your new business? Are you sure you'll get a raise? As much as possible, I try not to assume things. I like to look at the facts first and then decide what to do. What if the facts don't hold up? You can't always find them, or you have to make a choice quickly. When things like that happen, I like to trust my gut. No matter what, don't waste time on guesses and views from other people that aren't based on facts. True versus false. We talked about looking at facts in the last chapter. But are facts also the truth? It's not true. It's confusing, right? It's like real life. For example, does God really exist? I'm not sure. There's never been any proof for me. Does that imply that God does not exist? It does not matter what I think. No matter what experts say, if God changes the way you live, it's true for you. Friedrich Nietzsche was a German philosopher who had a big effect on Western philosophy. He reportedly said, "There are no facts, only interpretations." Nietzsche knew himself very well. In fact, Sigmund Freud said that Nietzsche knew himself better than any other person who had ever lived or was likely to live. When it came to his own thinking, he thought very deeply and carefully. Nietzsche said that there are no facts, which means that our opinions of reality are the only things that matter. There's no objective way to prove truth. That doesn't mean that nothing is real and we're all dreaming. We need to understand that facts are not the same as the truth. You don't have to worry about being right or wrong when you think that easy thought. It's not productive to try to change the minds of people who don't agree with you about what's true. Do more useful things with your energy. Give yourself time to think. I thought for a long time, he's really smart and can think on his feet. When something went wrong, someone spoke to me, or someone asked me a question, I would think quickly. My first answer was, of course, terrible. One of my favorite minds, Derek Sivers, says he thinks slowly. A lot of people think that your first response is the most honest, but I don't agree. Most of the time, your first response is wrong. Either you're using an old answer without giving it much thought, or it makes you feel strongly about something that happened a long time ago. It takes time to think things through. I was rash and didn't think at all when I gave a quick answer. Derek Sivers learned over time not to believe what he thought at first. Also, he did that when his email took too much of his time and attention. Because Derek was well known, he got a lot of emails from people who liked his writing. Most of them were short 5-minute questions. He does say that if you get 100 of those questions, that's 8 hours a day. Between 2008 and 2016, Derek answered 192,000 texts. He knew he had to do something about it, so he was going to cut himself off from the world, like Henry David Thoreau did in the 1800s. I was going to go hardcore, shut off all email and social media, and make myself unreachable to all but a few close friends and colleagues. It felt like the only solution. That was his first idea. Later he understood that I could remain reachable as long as I don't answer questions, as Derek writes on his blog. I'm glad he didn't follow through with his first thought. His second thought is much better. You know, I've emailed Derek before, and I believe that what he does is very important for people. If someone asks you a question, it's okay to say, I don't know. You can also say that to yourself. I've been too hard on myself a lot of the time because I couldn't solve my problems right away. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. Why do we care if other people think we're stupid? That's a great example of thinking slowly. You don't have to act on your urge to prove them wrong. Instead, you can stop and ask yourself, why do I even want to seem smart? Because what other people think has no effect on you. It's always better to give yourself time to think. Other people are wrong if they think that makes you stupid. Not long ago, people asked me, should we book a business trip to Thailand? Are you interested in a speaking gig at Company X? Should we remodel the kitchen? Do you think we should fire John Doe? How about hiring another sales executive? What do you know? It's important to me to both take time to think deeply about problems and take time to think quickly about what to do. I didn't think about the speaking gig, interview, or class for long after I said yes to them. We're more likely to say yes when the answer is no. You say to yourself, that trip is planned for September. It's now March. That's a long time from now. And then you agree to a 5-day work trip or family vacation. But by September, you're either really into your work, have other more important things to do, or are in the middle of something else. Now that quick yes from a long time ago is always on your mind. Should I pull out of the trip? Should I go? Should I only go for 2 days? Why do we make things so hard when we can just give ourselves one more day to think? Just give it some thought. Get to know yourself. For example, I'm in a great writing flow right now. I don't want to leave my city. Every day I do the same thing, and it works great for me. I'm glad I'm alive and having a good time. My whole pattern can get thrown off when I leave for even a weekend, and it takes me 2 weeks to get back to normal. I don't always think this way, though. I'm writing this book, setting up a new office, and getting a new room all at the same time. I have a few important things on my mind. Sometimes, though, I'm more open-minded, and I do enjoy traveling, visiting friends and business partners, and living a less strict life. I now take more time to decide what to do because of this. I say, please give me a day or two to think about it. That's all you need to know. Let go of your thoughts. I started working out my brain every day after I changed the way I thought about life. I began reading for 2 hours every day and writing down a lot of what I learned. I began writing articles to share the new thoughts I had gained. At first, I felt like I could see a whole new world. I was eager to learn more all the time. I bought new books every week and read everything I could that taught me something new. It was fine for a few weeks, but then I lost it. My mind stopped working all of a sudden. I felt stuck. I was unable to think, read, or write. It hurt all day. It went on for a few days, almost a week. I didn't know why I was sick. I had no idea why. I just picked up where I left off when I felt better. This time, I kept going for about 2 months before I ran into another wall. But things were different this time. It seemed like I wasn't getting better or learning anything new no matter what I did. But I kept going and worked through the problems. I finally got what was going on after this trend happened a few times. Train your mind in stages, and you have to get through a wall before you can move on to the next part of your learning growth. I think that getting better at things and learning new skills happen in stages. It's easy to learn new things at the start of a new stage because everything is brand new. When you get close to the end of a stage, though, things get harder. That was me. I had headaches, but I wasn't quite done yet because I got right back to work after a short delay. You hit a big wall at some point, and that's when your mind breaks down. You also want to give up on whatever you're working toward, like writing a book, starting a business, changing careers, or leading a group of people. Everything stops when you hit a wall. Now the book doesn't seem useful at all. Since words are how we mostly talk to each other, they're also how we think. I talk to myself when I think and when I write down notes. When I had the idea for this chapter, I wrote in my notebook, "Write a chapter about drawing your thoughts." I think that's interesting. Many people know Leonardo da Vinci as one of the greatest thinkers of all time. He thought with his eyes. How do I understand this? Someone showed me his notes, which are easy to find on Google. This is an example. We don't need to get this good at drawing right away, but I think we can still learn something. Drawing takes your mind off of all the talking that you're doing. I've been making pictures for my blog posts for more than a year now. I haven't gotten better at drawing, but I have gotten better at writing articles. One reason for this is that I think about how I can show my thoughts visually. By looking at my drawings, I want people to understand right away what I'm trying to say in the piece. So I think a lot about how to picture an idea. A graph, a sentence or word that I want to stand out, or even a simple drawing are all things I can do. I often change my writing to make my thought clearer after I make the drawing. There are even pieces that begin with a drawing. Like the last book, this one began with a picture. This is the drawing I used for the From Chaos to Clarity chapter. It's here again. I didn't have a reason for making that picture. Some of my ideas were just coming to life in my mind. One of my thoughts is that my mind was a mess until I found a way to get rid of it. Because of this, I can think straight. That's the whole picture turned into a book. René Descartes said, "Be yourself, not what you should be." In other words, don't beat the world, beat yourself. What do you do well? What do you not do well? What do you do to learn new things? What do you dislike? To put it another way, who are you? What is your DNA? Because of our genes, we are pretty much all the same. We are all made of flesh and blood, and we all die. Why is it important to know yourself? I didn't know. I made bad decisions because I didn't know myself well enough. The jobs I had, the girls I dated, the things I chased, the decisions I made, and the people I spent time with didn't meet my strengths, values, skills, and wants. For instance, the woman I used to date wanted to live in different places and see the whole world. That idea doesn't work for me. I want to be close to my friends and family. Going doesn't make me feel like I'll miss anything. I sold useless things to people who didn't need them in boiler rooms. It's possible that I did that for the money, but I don't know why. I thought, that's what you do, but I wasn't sure. 10 years from now, I'll know myself better than I do now. The first step is to know yourself. The second step is to act on what you know. When chances come up, you might not have time to think about whether or not they are important, but make it a goal. You'll end up where I did a few years ago if you don't. From 2012 to 2015, I didn't think about anything. Then, all of a sudden, I was stressed out and didn't know what to do with my life. It was a real midlife moment for me. I read more books because I didn't know what to do. A lot of smart and happy people I knew wrote in journals and thought more about their lives. They thought about the things they did well, the things they could have done better, and the things they learned. Once I started writing every day in my book, I began by writing my life story. It's not meant to be shared. It's just for me to learn and think. Write about your life if you don't know what to write. My money rules. A friend of mine told me he hates his job. I asked him what he was going to do. He said, "I need the money." Without thinking about it, I knew that he thought the only thing he could do was quit. This is because when we give something too much importance, we lean on it too much. A simple answer is to make money less valuable. These 5 rules guide my life. I haven't thought about money at all in the 3 years I've been doing that. No, that's not true. I still think about money, and so does everyone else. I stop thinking about money, though, once I feel like I have enough in my savings account. You will figure it out if you have enough money to last for 6 months, no matter what. One thing is required. You must improve your skills. We shouldn't think we can always get a job or make money. But is that really a surprise? I just make sure that my money is invested and not spent. You can put your money to work in more than just the stock market or real estate. Getting a new laptop costs $3,000, but I don't mind because it helps me do my job, which pays the bills. I never skimp on price when I buy important things either. This jacket will last for years, so I'd rather spend a little more and not have to buy a new one next year. I don't buy things I don't need, plain and simple. Every year I don't need a new iPhone. Also, I don't need shoes that cost $5,000. That doesn't mean I only have one pair of shoes, though. I just do not buy everything I like. Too much stuff is not useful for me because I don't have enough room. I also like to train myself to say no to things to get better at self-discipline. Remember that money can be replaced. You can get it back when you're done with it. That's not true for time. Remember not to think about money too much. Do not try to think your way out of anything. At first glance, this doesn't make sense. But bad ideas often happen when you think too hard. That's because you can't always think your way out of problems. We've all had great thoughts while we're in the shower, because we're not thinking. Give your mind a break and let your thoughts roam. This is another way to keep your mind in check. You are the one who can choose when to let go of your thoughts. You can clear your mind in the same way that lying on the couch after a long day relieves stress. There are many ways to do that. Some people like to do yoga, while others like to sit every day. Doesn't matter what kind of medium. I now know a lot of different ways to unwind. One thing is very important, though. All you need to relax is yourself. You don't need music, smells, exercise, yoga, or anything else you think you need. Give up everything. To find peace, you can shut out the outside world and go inside your thoughts. Get ready to do that if you can't do it now. The process is to become aware of your thoughts, watch them, and then let them go. You can do that anywhere and at any time. To do those things, you don't need a new place or class. Let go and calm down as often as you think you need to. There will be times when you're not thinking that are just as important as times when you are. Do something different. Ordinary thought makes ordinary things happen, not because I want to be different, but because it makes ordinary things happen. That bothers me, and you wouldn't be reading this book if you liked usual outcomes. Let's take a quick look at how decisions are made. Making a list of pros and cons is the most common way to make a choice. Benjamin Franklin was the first person to write down this method. In a letter from 1772 to his friend Joseph Priestley, he wrote about it. We still make these kinds of lists all the time today. If I quit my job, broke up with my boyfriend, took this job offer, bought a new car, or started a business, what are the pros and cons? Then we gather our paper, draw a line down the middle, and begin writing down the pros on the left and the cons on the right, or the other way around. I liked how easy this method was, but I stopped using it after a friend told me to make one of these lists when things were going badly in my first relationship. I wrote down the good and bad things about breaking up with my lover at the time. I feel bad about what I did now. It didn't even make sense, because there are always things that are more important than everything else. Almost all lists of the pros and cons of relationships are the same. The pros of staying in a relationship are having someone to talk to about everything, having sex, going on vacation, etc. The cons of staying in a relationship are having less free time, fighting, visiting my in-laws, etc. It doesn't help that it's always the same. It's the same when you quit a job you hate. One good thing is that you're not stuck in a bad job. One bad thing is that there's a lot of unpredictability. Stepping away from this way of thought is time. Stop thinking in two-way fixed terms and start thinking in more than two ways. In life, you can have both this and that. I always thought I had to quit my business or get a job. A lot of my friends also think you should quit your job and start your own business. Who or what said these things? A few years ago, when my business wasn't doing well, I quit and went to work for a big IT study company. I did both of them. On the weekends and in the evenings, I ran my business. Sometimes I did it during the day. I worked for the company the rest of the time. You can start a business even if you already have a job. Now you understand what I mean when I say think outside the box. We always put limits on ourselves by thinking in narrow, common ways. The reason we always want to stay in a box is that we never step back and look at the bigger picture. Look at the picture below, right? If you're in the maze, you'll probably start to walk toward the middle, right? When you're lost, that's what you should do. The prize is not in the middle of this puzzle, though. It's outside of it. The goal, on the other hand, can only be seen from above. From inside the maze, it's hard to see the goal. But that's how most of us live. We follow the rules because that's the right thing to do. From now on, you'll do things the way you get them done instead of the way everyone else does them. Don't ask me why. I'm bad at sending emails, especially when it comes to picking who to send them to. I always type the first letter of a name and press Enter. I believe in computers so much that I never check to see if the address I've chosen is really the one of the person I want to email. I'm not motivated. Most of the time it doesn't matter, and people always answer in a funny way. But this one mistake cost me $150,000 in business one time. I had a deal with two companies that lasted for several years. Both of the people I talked to had the same name. We'll call them Vim. The first Vim was a client. Let's call him Vim A. And the second Vim was a prospect. They both wanted the same kind of advice for their businesses, but Vim A got a better deal because he was a past customer. The deal was meant for Vim A, but I sent it to Vim B instead. It wasn't a simple mistake this time. Vim B had already seen my plan, which cost more altogether. He was angry, though, when he saw that Vim A got a lower rate. "Why does he get a lower rate? Is that how you do business?" he asked me. He made up his mind not to do business with us. 3 things I learned. Always check again. Things that are little can grow into big ones. Do not pick winners. You can't ask me why I messed up or why I was always too lazy to check my email. I was wrong. I just was. I can't explain away my mistake. Do not ignore important details by saying, "It doesn't matter." Maybe it doesn't matter that you hit snooze every morning or don't pay attention to the details of your movie or book report. The point is that giving up on being perfect becomes a habit. Do not stress over being an expert. There is no such thing. Everyone isn't perfect all the time. That we're afraid of what other people will think of our work is just an excuse for being picky. No matter what, don't ask why when things go wrong or troubles arise. Instead, think about what you can do to stop or get around the things that are holding you back. Pay even more attention to the little things. There was a small thing I forgot that cost me a lot of business. But the lesson I learned was worth more than the business I lost. Most of the time, the little things matter the most in work, sports, art, business, and life in general. I like the saying, "The devil is in the details," but I never took it to heart because I was too anxious. I always tried to get everything done quickly, like calls, emails, reports, homework, articles, and more. That was my first book title, The Art of Being Useful. At first, I liked it because it sounded like something I knew. But since my book was about thinking, I used the same methods. I asked myself, what does the art of even mean? I couldn't come up with a good answer, so I knew I had to change the term. It's funny that my second book was called The Power of Pragmatic Thinking, Like a Genius. I thought of another general title that was longer than the first one. How many books begin with the power of? The Power Of was one of 83,500 books I looked for on Goodreads. There are a lot of books with those words in the title or summary. I learned that you need to make your book stand out when you write it. It doesn't matter that there is a better book on thinking. You likely picked up this book because you were hoping for something different. But since I had written other books like it before, I knew no one would think it would be different. 2 weeks before it came out, I started promoting Think Straight on my website and social media. My friends got really excited very quickly. I soon had emails saying things like, "I can't wait for the book, great job," and "I can't wait to read your new book. You are very determined. I'm looking forward to Think Straight." I care about my readers, which is why I gave the term a lot of thought. Someone was interested in the title, but no one was reading the book at that point. That was my goal. Thanks to everyone who emailed me before the meeting began. I hope I heard you. Make a winky face. You have to think about little things just to do your job. You, as an author, need to make sure your book is the best it can be. As an artist, it's your job to make the best idea you can. Don't think that you can write one book or make one offering and then stop. You need to keep going over the details if you want to get better in your mind, your heart, and your money. If you want to do a good job, don't forget or lowball things. Don't do the job at all if you can't. Take away the way you're thinking. I don't want to become someone who just thinks and never does anything. The only reason I can think of is that I want to spice up my life. It makes me happy to get more out of things. That's why I don't like to think about every day. Doesn't it sound weird? You said you needed to think more, but now you say you're not thinking as much. Of course, that's what I mean. You will do better things if you improve the quality of your ideas. Remember that you should always do something instead of thinking. The best way to make sure you do more is to make it a habit. You can think about exercise as an example. This is something I've always had trouble with. I was overweight for a long time. I always played mind games with myself when it came to food and exercise. Should I work out or go for a run? I'm going to the gym tomorrow after eating these chips. Which days should I work out? Every Monday, Wednesday and Friday, or maybe every Tuesday and Thursday? That makes me think too much and doesn't help. You should work out every day for at least 30 minutes, but don't do too much. This will help you follow my simple rules. Also, stay away from junk food and eat healthy foods. You should also write down what you eat and how often you work out. Systems help you do things without having to think about them. All you need are a few rules. Nothing you do will work if your method doesn't work. Just think about it. If my way made me feel bad or made me gain weight, I would change it. People always ask me what I can change or how I can make things better, even if they love what they do. Don't think about your mistakes all the time. When I was a kid, my grandmother was always nearby. She gave up a lot for her parents, brothers and sisters, husband, and then her children. At one point, she may have been too kind. That's also life. She gave up a lot to spend the last few years of her life in the Netherlands instead of her home country of Iran. You have to give to build a strong family and live together. It made her feel so bad about the past that she talked about it all the time. In her last few years, she almost cried every day. We went to see her a lot with my mom, dad, brother and I. We made her laugh, which was nice, but I could always feel her sadness. There were many things my grandmother taught me, but the main ones were to be kind and value family. I learned from her that the most important thing is to rue what you didn't do, not what you did. I promised myself I would always remember that lesson when my grandmother died in January 2015. I used to think I wanted to travel the world and live in different places. I know this isn't a new goal. A lot of the people I talk to love the idea of being free and going on adventures. Why does that take place? I think a lot of it comes from pop culture. Jack Kerouac and Ernest Hemingway are two well-known tourists who a lot of people look up to. Today, teens and young adults look up to social media stars who travel the world and share pictures of their trips on Instagram. You still want to travel and share your stories, even though the way you do it has changed. However, not everyone can live that way. And I didn't know that before I moved. Really, how could I? Some things in life you have to go through to really understand them. Before you run your own business, you can't really understand what it's like. You will never be an entrepreneur just by reading business books and watching movies about how to start your own business. You'll end up living someone else's life. A job that pays well but makes me sad is not worth it to me. I'd rather eat rice and beans and do the things I love. You can only be happy with your life if you do what you really want. Just make sure your thoughts are clear so you can act on them. Do not turn around. I don't think about the past very often. I don't think about the past during the day. I don't spend all day watching old movies. I'm not thinking about taking shots because I'm too busy with the moment. Some days I feel sad because I believe most people live their lives in the past tense. They don't enjoy the moment. Instead, they pull out their phone and take a picture of it. I'd rather be here and now than watch life through a screen. The truth is that I'm not always fully present. But I do try to live in the present, and I know I'm doing a good job because I don't want to remember the past. I'm having too much fun at the moment. I do take pictures of my family, but not too many of them. I just don't take many pictures that I'll never look at again. When can you take some time to remember everything? How many movies and photos do you have? How many old songs, awards, gifts, and other real things that remind you of the past do you still have? I have good news for people who find it hard to let go. That old iPhone that's been sitting in your desk drawer for years will never be used. Change the movie you watched on your weekend trip with friends. Take a look at your old tests, books, and grades. Don't forget to put away those old clothes. You can do whatever you want with the thing that reminds you of your first date. When we hold on to the past, it makes it hard to live in the present. I can only think of one good reason to look back. To learn. You can learn a lot from your past. That's why I like writing in a book. A lot of the time, when things don't go as planned, I read back through my journal entries to figure out what I was thinking. I'm trying to figure out why I went back. For 2 years, I wrote every day, and more than 22,000 people signed up for my email list. In 2017, I started a paid membership site. Before I began, I gave the membership site too much thought. I could write, train, and help other people for a living if 1,000 people gave me $5 a month. If you pay, I'll give you content that no one else has. I thought, that's a good deal. I thought of 1,000 after reading Kevin Kelly's important piece, 1,000 True Fans. I also checked out how other blogs began their membership sites. I knew people liked my work because I had sold a lot of online classes before that, or at least it looked good on paper. But it didn't happen what I thought it would. 78 people signed up. I took down the registration page after a month. Many people, like paid members, friends, and co-workers, told me I quit too soon after 6 weeks. It's possible, but I never give up. I thought about dropping out a lot during the 6.5 years it took me to get 2 degrees. I've also thought a lot about leaving my family business because it's so hard to make money. But that will never change. I did not quit my site because I made a mistake. At this rate, it will take me over a year to get 1,000 paid users. Also, 6 people dropped out in the first month, so adding them will make the process take even longer. Also, for the past 6 weeks, I've felt like I had to give my paid members extra content. It stresses me out a lot to make sure they get something from the membership. I could use that time to grow our family business or my teaching business instead. I don't think a membership site is the best choice in the end. I thought about it more before adding 78 to the number. How are people going to stay? What do you need to do? Are there any other ways I can reach my goals? I'm also able to help people in many other ways. I also have a lot of other ways to make money. This is why I shut down my membership site after only 6 weeks. It's not really important if things don't go as planned. Pick something, don't change it, and move on. Just look back to understand. It is easy to see what I could have done better when I think about the time I wasted trying to become a member. Making the club room, writing copy, adding stuff and other things took me 3 months. I knew right away that having a membership site would take time. Do you remember what it said about details? Either do the job right or not at all. In this case, I should not have done anything. Why? I was too busy running my family business, writing books and papers, teaching and giving advice to have time for myself. Everywhere I go, I've learned that I can only do one big thing at a time. Don't stare for too long when you look back. Things are happening now. Watch out for time because it's running out. We all learn that one day, and after that we watch how we spend our time more carefully. Thoughts can make you stronger or weaker, just like a sword with two edges. How you think shapes what will happen. Mind is just a tool, nothing more or less. In this book, I wrote about how I've improved the way I use my mind. Sometimes you need to stop thinking, and sometimes you need to change the way you think. You should pick which way to use when. Don't think too much, though. It's not useful. There's no point in thinking if you don't do anything. So, as we already said, do something after you think about it. When you have good thoughts, you do good things. To help you understand what I mean, here are some things to think about: making your life better, growing your business and job, picturing your future, coming up with new ideas, solving problems, and planning fun things to do with your partner, family, or friends. It's not hard to get. But staying with this way of thinking is hard and takes work. Don't think that reading this book just once will make you a better mind. Thinking better is a skill that needs to be used every day, just like any other skill. One way I do that is by seeing every event as a chance to think more clearly. If I don't, I waste time on useless things like complaining, being sad, and not loving my life. Some of us think too much and miss out on life. It's not because of the cool things other people do. Everybody knows that life is beautiful because of the little things that happen. Did you see the sun or the rain when you wake up this morning? Have you smelled your coffee? Did you feel the grains with your hands? If the answer is no, you need to stop thinking about things and take a deep breath. This whole thing is only meant to make you feel calm. No matter what happens or what happens in your life, you should always keep your mind calm. That's life's most important thing. When we master our minds, we are in charge of what we think. Remember that getting better every day is the only way to do that. Some folks may call it mindfulness or meditation. Don't make it hard to understand. No matter what you call it, calm down inside. You don't need to go to a school that costs $110,000 to learn how to calm down. Take a moment to connect with your thoughts, pay attention to them, and then push them away. That's all there is to how to meditate. I meditate to calm down every time I walk, work out, write, wait, sit, lie down, or do anything else. Going inside myself is always something I can do. It's important to know that I'm ready to go. Yes, you can learn to control your thinking without a yoga mat, music, or a book. It's that important. I know I've said it before. You can calm down by going inside yourself at any time. Also, you don't need a drink, a trip, or new shoes. How do I get this? I am in charge of what I think and what it does. You can too. Consider other people. The pragmatist school of thought gave me a lot of ideas for this book. Perhaps Charles Sanders Peirce, who taught at Johns Hopkins University, was the first person to write about pragmatism. But if you look into the history of the theory more, you'll find that William James was the one who called Peirce its father in 1898. In the 1880s, some people thought Charles Sanders Peirce was a smart man, but by the end of the 1800s, they didn't like him as much. James and Peirce met in the 1860s while they were both students at the Lawrence Scientific School at Harvard. Peirce was once thought to be very smart in math and reasoning. His second marriage caused a scandal that got him fired from his job as a professor at Johns Hopkins University in 1884. The story is very sad. Peirce's first wife left him in 1875. Not long after that, he began seeing someone else while he was still married. But after 8 years, he was no longer together. During those 8 years, he lived with a woman he wasn't married to. It's said that Simon Newcomb, who worked with Peirce, told on him, which got him fired. This made a big fuss in public. Peirce was sad that he could never get a job in education again. and he was poor for a long time. After he was fired, he even slept and lived on the streets of New York City for years. William James, an old friend, was the only person who could help him. James started writing a body of work that is still important today after he got over his sadness in 1870. After working on principles of psychology for 12 years and publishing it in 1890, James became a professor at Harvard and became well known in the academic world. James's job had been going up for years, but not his friends. Then, out of the blue in 1898, he gave the long-forgotten Charles Sanders Peirce the idea of pragmatism in a talk called Philosophical Conceptions and Practical Results. If you believe in pragmatism, you should judge ideas by how useful they are in real life. James thought that scientists were wasting their time on ideas and theories that were too broad and couldn't be used in real life. Would you change the way you live if science told you how the earth was made? Puritans think that there is no such thing as 100% proof of anything. The idea is talked about in Pragmatism, a reader by Louis Menand. He says, "Every choice we make is based on what we think the world will do or be today." Another good thing that James did was give Peirce credit for the idea. This is true no matter what people think about reality. That's what makes James so great. He didn't want credit for something he made because Peirce and practicality would not exist without James's work and backing. That was a big thing for James to do. He helped a friend. People paid attention to Peirce, and in his later years he even wrote a few papers. That's the most important thing James taught me. As William James said, the greatest use of a life is to spend it on something that will outlast it. But in real life, there's no point in doing something that will outlast you, because you won't be there to see it. But that's not the point. We will spend our time on things that really matter if we remember every day to try to do or make things that other people will find useful and important. Everyone will have value in their life if you do that. Thanks a lot for going on this trip with me. I wanted you to know how I think. I hope this book helps you stay strong and that you read it more than once, especially when things are tough. I'm glad you took the time to finish. Some people who read a lot of books might not think it's important which one you choose, but as the author, it's everything to me. Thanks for that.